Hello, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net, and in this short video lesson we'll discuss 3 ways to play what you hear as jazz guitarist. So we'll begin with some tips about improvising using preset constraints. Secondly, we'll talk about playing what you sing or singing what you play, one of my trademark moves. And lastly, my favorite is an exercise in vivid aural imagination. So let's get going. The first tip is quite easy. Reduce the amount of constraints you use when you're improvising. Often players are juggling too many balls at once and soloing. In this exercise, we're going to concentrate on one idea only. To better play what you hear, you should focus on 1 or a maximum of 2 constraints at a time. We can define a constraint basically as a parameter for your improvisation. The reason is because it's often we don't even realize we're trying to do several things at once, right? And often we do all these things with moderate level of success, right? So to excel, we concentrate one element, develop it, and perfect it. To make things clearer, here's an example of where a jazz student is using too many constraints, right? So at a first glance, you may think, oh, this looks like an exaggeration, this is way too much. However, from my own experience, working with people in private lessons, this is not far from the truth, all right? So the player is soloing, that is improvisation, right? That's you're making lines up as you go. He's doing this in time at a fast swing tempo, while making the changes, that is clearly outlining the chord changes, with the metronome clicking on every 2 and 4 of every bar, the typical jazz swing thing, using chromatic passing notes within the line. On a standard chord progression, in strictly one position on the fretboard, as if this is not enough already, and lastly, playing only 8 notes, figure, so, machine gun style, Pat Martino, right? Whatever your current level is, that's way too much to handle at once to make this an efficient practice. And what's funny, you probably notice that play what you hear is not even on the list. So we'll need to narrow it down to focus on the good stuff only. So now let's clear things up in the above examples. So here's how to really approach things to really maximize hearing what you play. Try working with only one constraint at a time, and I'll really make sure you're nailing each one individually before attempting to combine 2 or 3 or 4 or 9 of the constraints altogether, right? So here's how to do it. So the first example is while soloing on a standard chord progression still, I'll try to play consecutive 8 notes without stopping. That's fairly easy. This means that I'll be sacrificing 1, the fast tempo, 2, the making the changes, 3, the metronome, 4, the chromatics, 5, the in only one position, and that's a lot of sacrifice. But I'll be doing some great, super concentrated work on a well-needed area. And for me, say, that's like playing consecutive 8 notes, right? When I'm really comfortable with the consecutive 8 notes, I'll move to the next constraint. Follow, I'll attempt once again on a standard progression, etc., to nail the other constraint. That could be, say, I'll choose anyone, so I'll choose making the changes and work all on its own. So I'll do this with each constraint I have on my list. Focus on one, sacrifice the others. Focus on the next constraint, sacrifice the others, as well as the previous one I worked so hard. Eventually, all the constraints will fuse together in your playing. So that's a goal, right? To play what you hear. Sounds good? All right, so you see how this makes for a more efficient and much more ear-friendly practice, right? So less ball to juggle means less risks of dropping the ball or all of them at once. Now, before we jump on the second tip, there are many ways to reduce the amount of constraints you use. So here's some great examples to get you inspired with only one constraint. More tools to get you really hear what you play. Try these approaches. Try improvising on 1 string at a time. So this is aka the horizontal approach on the fretboard. Only 1 or 2 chords, like a static vamp of some sort, within the same key. So all chords from the same key center, such as a diatonic cycle of 4th. You can reuse the same major scale, etc. You could also use 1 area of the fretboard. So make sure you can hear and execute every note before you get started, and just go by finger, by how, by technicality. You don't go by this, you go with your ears. Of course, now your constraints will evolve. What you consider a constraint at this point might change in the future because the system, you're using this system and you're improving. You may have different strengths and you might want to assume you can always nail it. For instance, regarding the technique or an area of the fretboard, so those are not necessarily constraints anymore. It's like holding the pick is not a constraint anymore. Playing the guitar is not a constraint anymore. There's things you have worked on well enough that they're intuitive part of your playing, Trust yourself and with these things, and you've earned it, right? It goes without saying, playing everything you sing or vice versa is a good indicator that your ears are well connected to your instrument. So here's some simple advice. Whatever you play from now on, sing it. When you catch yourself playing lines you can't sing, BS, just stop and resume from a singing standpoint. Always. Why it works? Well, imagine this. Project yourself in the future, say 6 months from now. Imagining you can sing along with 95% of the lines you play on the guitar. Does this mean that you have better hearing and playing skills as compared to your current abilities? I'm sure it does. Think about it. So that's it. Just sing. So you've probably noticed this is simply the quick tip for this lesson. Number 2, sing what you play. It's not always that simple, right? You may start by having to take a very simple line from a book or recording and having to hum it or whistle it until you can sort of approximate the pitches. The point here is not to become obsessed with the details. Your singing will wind up being off pitch a lot of the time, like me. And what's important is singing and humming the musical gesture of your improvised line. If you're playing what you hear, your musical intentions go hand in hand with what's happening in your ears and in between your ears, in your mind. So I just have to throw myself under the bus right here. Here's the beginning of a blues improv, something like in B flat. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, you see, I'm probably off pitch to what you would actually come out on the guitar, right? But you can hear it close enough to understand what the pitches would be when I actually play it. And when I do have my guitar in hand, I would kind of just correct the pitches that I play and or sing, right? So this is a big topic, as I've received countless questions and emails on this YouTube channel, also in comments over the years since 2009. If you've been watching videos on this channel, you've probably heard me scat-sing a lot of the things I play on the guitar during the lessons and exercises. There's a whole story behind it though, so it's not just, oh, this guy sings his lines. So here, while I was studying for an undergrad degree in jazz studies in university, the teacher for the improv class was a great trumpet player, always insisted I sing my lines. He said that non-horn players, so anybody that didn't play trumpet, trombone, or saxophone, should scat-sing everything they play. It's understandable coming from a trumpet player where you really have to sing and project the lines with your lung through the instrument. So I understood this teacher. So lucky me, wow, great teacher. So from day one, I put lots of efforts into singing the lines and trying to figure them out on my guitar. And it was a big failure. And I mean, for months at a time, all right? Maybe even more than months, closer to like a year and a half. I was very disappointed, and so was the teacher. So I didn't know what was wrong with me. I could play half decently on chord changes, I could play standards, but I couldn't scat ideas to save my own life. I was starting to wonder if maybe I was simply tone deaf or something like that. So months go by, and I had completely given up on the idea of singing and playing lines at the same time. Like, this is not for me. Never mind trying to imitate George Benson, have a microphone and sing, whatever. I simply wanted to sing my ideas to myself for the musical skill it represented, but I couldn't. Until one day. It just sort of happened. I was improvising on a tune with friends, probably in a trio format, and I had a little issue with the resolution of the melodic line I was playing. I hesitated a little bit, I grunted, then actually started to sing the rest of the line I was hearing in my head. And guess what? The fingers just followed. And it was almost like a miracle, like someone had flipped the switch on. And now for the bad news. I can't stop doing it. People think it's cool, right? Sometimes I get tired of hearing myself screaming high lines at the top of my lungs. Whatever, what can you do, right? So the whole danger in singing like that, it's good for your ears, but I'm still wondering, am I good at singing the notes I play? Or are the fingers actually obeying the lines I hear and sing? Quite frankly, I'm not sure. And a little bit of both's happening, I'm assuming, right? So what I do know is my improvising is much more grounded and authentic since I started singing. I don't play BS lines just because my fingers can. And the bonus is when I need to breathe, I just stop. So my solos actually include silences now. The last tip for this video on playing what you hear concerns what's happening in your musical mind. And we'll call this vivid aural imagination, a term coined by the great jazz pianist and educator Hal Galper in his book Forward Motion. We'll get to exercises on the guitar in just a second, but I recommend you get that book and work on the exercises found in the last few pages. In my edition, it's called Chapter 10, How to Practice Forward Motion. In summary, What's happening in your musical mind is directly related and reflected on your instrument. So you must learn to hear very clearly, and as Galper puts it, yell musical ideas very loudly in your mind so they finally manifest on the instrument. That's vivid aural imagination. It's akin to closing your eyes and being able to clearly see the face of someone very familiar, like a friend or family member. You close your eyes and you can see them, right? Imagine that you close your eyes and you see your musical ideas. Well, you don't see them, actually, you hear them. So elite jazz musicians have this ability to clearly envision musical lines in their mind as they happen on their instruments. The nice little mantra is, you are the instrument. As corny as it may sound right now, that's really what it is. So even the simplest of scales ideas like do, re, mi won't quite come out right on the guitar if you don't hear it extremely loudly, extremely well and clearly in your inner ears first. If you don't have this ability now, don't worry, it's normal, right? As far as I can tell, 9 out of 10 jazz students are visual people. I mean, we live in a visual society, right? But we can transfer that sort of vivid imagination that we have from the visual to our hearing. Now onto the exercises. Let's play the ascending C major scale together in half notes. Now we'll use the simple line to practice hearing more vividly in our mind. This is the first few steps. We can't go through it all now on YouTube, but you'll see. So here's a C major scale. You can play it in open or any position you like. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3. That's it. Now let's play the C major scale in half notes once again, but twice. And the first time around, you have to scream it in your head without playing anything. So once again, the same scale line, but we'll play it in our head together. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, right? If you have trouble with this, please rewatch our video, rewind it. All we did is really hear it in our head without actually playing anything. So now that you have this line imprinted in your imagination, let's work on adding a pickup note to it. So still on the C major scale. So before the first C, you'll play a D note, D, C. Then before the D, you'll play E, D, D, na. So let's execute this in time, but while we do it, once again, you have to yell, scream that basic half note line. Just the notes of the scale. You have to hear that like your life depended on it. You ready? 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, it's really not rocket science. The thing is that we expect that basic scale to come around, and even if we add a pickup before it, we know it's coming and we try to hear that and kind of tackle onto that. So next, on your own, after this video, see if you can add 2 pickup notes. So instead of doing, see if you can go, and see if you can add 3, a 1, 2, 3, and while you do this, you have to do it very slowly. You have to focus strictly on the long note, which is just still the major scale, which you should be able to hear fairly well at this point, right? All good? All right, so at a certain point, you'll become very good at this, and you'll find that the main difficulty is with the speed. The faster it gets, the harder it is to hear. And guess what? Your speed limit on the instrument matches exactly the limit of your hearing. Isn't that interesting? So a few last words on vivid aural imagination before I let you go. This can become your secret weapon to mastering improvisation. After a while, you realize that the musical ideas you're practicing, in fact your lines, 2, 5, 1s, and licks, aren't yet the same ones as you play on the bandstand. What you do bring with you on a gig is that process of hearing lines in your head vividly. On a gig, you're attempting to hear fresh new things so loud in your mind that you're compelled to play them on the guitar. So never mind trying to plug in that nice West lick or whatever. You're just training to hear better whenever you're learning new things on the guitar. A great measuring stick to tell you how well you can vividly imagine lines is, can you dream music on your instrument? Can you lay down in bed and hear notes and see where your fingers are on the guitar? right? That's a question. See if you can, and work at this on a regular basis for a week or so, and you'll see a huge difference in your hearing. Like all videos, there's always a bonus. So here's number 4, the tip. This is, I like to over-deliver and under-promise, so use a strict guitar method. Often in life, we need to repeat ideas over and over and over and over and over to master command of them, right? Driving a car, shucking oysters, practicing guitar, life. So music is no different, whether you're learning to walk or playing guitar, it's the same thing. We need to hear and play the same exact things many times before it actually becomes part of us, and that we can hear them and use them, right? This is why I recommend using a crystal clear step-by-step method for most of my students. So not everybody, but kind of everybody. So beginning to use a new method now might feel like taking a step back to you. However, it's a step back that can propel your abilities forward. So methods are great because they offer built-in repetition and thoroughness. If you really want to deeply connect musically with an instrument and thus play what you hear, diligently following a guitar method is a great way to go. So the method will focus your study, right? The pitches and the rhythms are notated, so it's often a relief for the jazz improviser. Finally someone is telling me exactly what to play on the instrument. That's great news for you. Personally, I really love using a modern method for guitar, but there are other good ones on the market, I'm sure. Modern method is often referred to as the Berkeley method, right? It shows you the 7 positions and more of the major melodic minor scales, along with great modern voicings for jazz. So shop around, ask your instructor or ask local great jazz players. But if you want to go to the modern method way, aim to finish volume 1 and 2, say, within about a year. You'll be really glad you did. So that's it. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you liked it. Please subscribe to this channel if you want more free lessons on a regular basis. Once again, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher, and I'll see you soon on the website. Take care.